ask that non-churchgoer. I mean, I think he should answer first as a non-churchgoer. That would make sense.
Okay, Obi, they've put you on the spot.
Wow. Okay, let's kick this off. I think it's difficult for me to say because my non-attendance is more of a personal decision. But if I were to take a step back from that and just generalize as to why that might be the case, I'd probably say it's just more of a question of the directions the different both sexes go in the context of as a man, one of your primary goal, especially at this stage in life we are at this moment in time, is all about providing and all about trying to provide some degree of security. And where I'd say women can find that in relationships or find that in relationships easier, as men, we tend to want to find those things in tangible sort of attainment. So I have a roof over my head, I own a house, I have a good job, I'm moving up in my career. So we tend to lean towards those tangible things. And so that naturally will cause, I'll say, a deviation between both sexes. Because whilst the spiritual and the emotional is quite important for like women, for men, it's actually more about let me get the tangibles so I can be in the German whip for my blog.
Do you go to the gym?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
You don't go to the gym? You don't do any leisurely activities that aren't tangible?
I play football.
Right, okay. And you see that as a tangible activity?
That's slightly different though, because in that context, you are equating what I love to do to my spirituality, which is not always true, at least not even true for any of the population really, because what I love to do is just what comes innately to me. It's like I enjoy playing football. I derive joy from that. It's like I'm not getting paid to do it. In some cases, I even pay to do it. So that should tell you about the dynamics of that relationship or engagement with that event, as opposed to my spirituality, which is more of a non-commercial. It's more of me trying to find something that gives my life meaning, which in truth might not necessarily give you joy. It just gives you like a peace of mind or some sense of I'm okay, if I can summarize it that way.
And do you not think church could give you that sense of I'm okay as well?
That's what I just said. That's what the spirituality provides, which is different from what football provides, which is like for these 2 hours, I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just enjoying this game. And at the end of it, it might be sad because I might have lost. But for those 90 minutes to 2 hours, yes, I'm in a good space. I'm in a great space.
I think.
Go ahead.
So I think the question actually that you've asked already is quite a valid question. Where are the men? And I think fundamentally it's a question that even God himself really asked at the beginning in Genesis when he said, Adam, Adam, where are you? And it's a question that has escalated down in history. Women are asking, where are you? Children are asking, who have been raised without fathers, where are you? Do you understand? Even the church is asking, where are the men? Because if you look through history, we have more women in the church than we have men. We have more women who willingly participate in the things of God than you would have men. Even though when you do find the men, you find the few men that are there, they might be very productive, but mostly what you see is more women in the church than you would see of men. So it's been a question that has gone through times, and it's very fundamental that even God himself raises that question about men. I think it's not just looking at men, and there are two parts to it. So we've got the male and we've got the men. And when God talks about who a man is, it's very, very different from you being a human or a male simply because of your reproductive organ. Is beyond that stage. Do you understand? So for me, I think this is a very, very valid question, and it will be very, very good and insightful to actually know why the men don't come to church as they should. And I think Ovia started to give us some of those reasons. So it's very interesting.
Dami,
So just
sorry, go on, Ovi. I'll ask Dami later.
So just a quick one, Richard, because it's interesting. Because whilst I'm a non-churchgoer, my parents are Christian, my family is Christian, so I'm quite familiar with the Bible. And that, I think that, for example, even as a starting point, as a build, kind of tells you the dynamic of what's naturally happening. Because God put Adam in Eden and said, "Well, this is your domain. Look after it." And when he came back, it was Adam, where are you? Because Adam was doing what he's been told to do, which is to tend to the domain that he's been given. So he was preoccupied doing other things which were non-spiritual and not necessarily seeking God at the time when he was supposed to be seeking God. Now, if you play that story further, let's just take it as it is. If you play that story further, what does God then do after he dismisses them from Eden? He tells Adam, you will work even much harder than you were probably even working when you were in Eden, which means you will end up having less time than you actually even did when you were in Eden, which was supposed to be a land of less work and less labor and less distractions. So it's just a natural evolution that if Adam couldn't find God when he was in Eden, where less work was probably even required, when he then got made into, you will now have to go out there and labor and toil in order to survive, he was definitely going to end up with even less time for his spirituality.
Interesting.
Sounds
like a setup from the start, yeah? Okay.
But it has its consequences, though, Ovi, in that, yes, Adam probably didn't seek God when he was supposed to seek God, and then it got even more difficult afterwards. But that is where, or that is the reason why society is where it is today, because the man is simply not found where he is supposed to be located. And if you take, for example, in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 22, verse 30, God says that he sought for a man to fill the gap. Do you understand? And because there was no man there, he cursed the land. So the land has been cursed from generations to where we are, simply because men are not in the place where they should be found. So it's escalated. It's made the society worse than it should be, simply because of this same principle of man not being where they're supposed to be.
I think the absence of men in church is to do with the stereotypical gender roles as well, because women are supposed to be more submissive and more understanding. So I think that we're in a position to adhere to a religion or religious body because we have to be subservient. We are raised to be subservient, but men are always put into the position of authority. And when you come into church, you have to be subservient to God. You have to be subservient to other positions in the church as well. And I think it's very difficult. That's why you find that there's a lot of men that become, this is controversial to say, that become entrepreneurs because they can't work for people. They can't submit to authority. So I think it's like the same kind of mindset when it comes to going to church, because they just can't relinquish that authority.
Someone said in the chat, I think it was Luddy, that said, church often encroaches on a man's desire to be autonomous and do things their own way, and it can be quite in your face. I mean, I know 2 out of the 4 guys here are churchgoers, but before you started going to church, how much of this statement rang true for you?
So what, church prevents people from being autonomous?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess to an extent, maybe. It depends on how you choose to, like, go. Some guys go to church and they think that, okay, there's certain things they can't do if they're going to church, as in their own personal lives, which is fine. But it's down to you. it's down to you to choose. Oftentimes, you know what it is, when a guy goes to church, there's certain responsibilities and accountabilities that are placed on that man.
Be specific.
Or specific, or if you're serving, maybe if you're serving within the church, because there's serving and then there's actually just attending. If you're serving, then the demands on you are greater.
What are the demands? You can't chase women.
What?
No. Okay, so let's say as a man, I attend church and I like the church and I decide to start serving in that church. Now, the demands are, number one, there's the religious demands, as in just the general ones that apply to every single person that comes to the church. Try to live a life of holiness, try to invite people to church, all these godly things. And then there's other things you might want to do outside that your religion tries to, or tells you not to do.
How's that different gender-wise? How's that different? So women will have to say.
I didn't say it's different gender-wise, but the part that I was saying is different gender-wise is the accountability. The biggest thing is accountability. Most men don't want to be accountable to anyone, and that's just fact. It's like if you're talking to a girl, and I think I said it to a friend of mine recently. If you're with a guy, more times a guy is going to be wayward in various different ways if there's no one you can hold him accountable to. You'll get him with a guy if there's no one that can put him in place, no one that can check him, whether it's a spiritual father, whether it's a uncle or whatever. If there's no one that can actually hold that person to accountability, then you're going to find it very difficult to advance with him. That's just my opinion. But church will give you that accountability, and a lot of men don't want it. So you said that. I forgot what you said, Sandra.
So did I, to be honest.
I think I'll just because I'll just borrow something from what both of you said, from just in terms of men being or wanting some level of autonomy. Because what I'd say is, if I were to look at a different example, which is more in Nigeria, for example. So in Nigeria, a typical church would not be female dominated, or at least to the extent that you would find it in the UK.
That's a good point.
But I also find that in Nigeria, there is a mix, or there's a natural mix between business and entrepreneurship and the church. It's like people actually go to church hoping they meet the right sets of people, or people who are in positions of power and responsibility who can provide them opportunities. So part of their incentive or reason for going to church isn't purely to seek the word of God, but hoping that they're going to meet that CEO or that chairman who they've been trying to get a meeting with and they haven't met, but they know here they will see him eyeball to eyeball. So that becomes a way of getting into the business community without necessarily having those networks for yourself. So I find that in Nigeria, that's like one of the key drivers of why the men are actually in church, not necessarily just purely for the spiritual, even though that might be part of it.
That is irritating. So
reality.
How is it irritating?
Because you're coming to church to network. Church is not about networking.
Let's be honest.
That's why I place it like Spat Nation. That's why I place it like Spat Nation, make it.
Yeah, even girls do it. I don't think it's only guys that do that come to church for a particular agenda that isn't necessarily spiritual. Women do it too. I mean,
curiosity brings everyone. It could be anything that could bring you to church. Yeah. Moses saw the burning bush, and because he was inquisitive about a bush burning or fire around the bush, but the leaves weren't burning, and that's why he decided to go a little bit further to see. So everyone will come into church. I know of someone who jollof rice brought him to church, and he stayed. I know people who, a woman brought them into church. However it is that brings you to church, it is because God wants you in, and so he gives you that little, that little trap for you to get you to come in. And once you are in, hopefully, you hear the word, and the word ministers to you and keeps you in. Do you get so?
That God breadcrumbs you into church.
Listen, there's nothing
wrong
in
but
him
you can't
trying
say,
to.
I don't even think you can say, okay, whilst you can joke about it, even if you take the Bible, for example, forget God breadcrumbed you into church. Saul, is it Saul? Yeah, Saul who turned into Paul. Saul who turned into Paul didn't want to be a Christian. Why did he become a Christian?
He had a vision. He had an encounter with
Just by the Holy Spirit.
No,
He
no,
didn't have an encounter. If you have encounters and make a free choice to become
no,
Christian.
but Saul thought he was doing the right thing. It wasn't that he didn't want to be a
No, but it's
Christian.
not
He thought,
about right or wrong. What I'm saying is, what was the process of Saul becoming Paul? Because Saul never went, oh, and now I'm doing the wrong things, I'm going to change. Or now I've seen the light, I'm going to change. He had an experience, and actually an elongated experience, where the Lord forced him to see the light.
How do you know the Lord forced
So,
him?
Guy was blinded. I mean, what are that?
thank you. So I don't have to say it. So technically, he didn't do this of his own free will. He was not just breadcrumbed. Which is my point. Is like if you were saying, "Oh, are you saying the Lord breadcrumbs you?" The Lord might not even just breadcrumb you. He might just channel block you, if that's how we want to use it. To say, see, there's no other choice now but to go to God, meet this chairman where he is in this church, and maybe you have to join the church.
So my question now is, so we've talked about autonomy, we've talked about God can even just say, you know what, I've had enough of you, by force, just go. But my question is, in this sense of this autonomy thing, how does that affect men's relationship with God? You can't be in a relationship with God and be fighting for your autonomy.
Dummy, we want to hear from you for this question.
Yeah, we need to hear from you. Because you're supposed to be totally submitted and surrendered. How do you then retain autonomy in that kind of relationship with God?
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. For me personally, I'm the type of individual, and if you know me properly, I don't like being told what to do. So, for example, even if my mom gets on to me, I'm gonna go to church, I'm gonna go to church. The more she tells me to go to church, just by default, I'll be like, no, I'm not going. Just because you're on my case. Just because you're on my case. I'm the type of person, if I'm gonna do something, sorry, that's my character. If I'm the type of person to do something, I have to do it off my own free will. I have to do something because I'm ready to do it. In terms of my whole relationship with church, as I said, I'll classify myself as a part-timer. The times that I do attend, I suppose I might wake up one day and feel, you know what, I just feel like I need to go, or I want to go, I will go. The times when I'm tired or I'm just feeling lazy, I'm not going. It doesn't matter. It's not about who tells me to do what. It's about how spirit-filled I am on the day almost. But although I don't go to church regularly, I see myself as someone who's actually very spiritual. I still fear God. I don't read the Bible per se, but I like to feel I still have that connection. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a child of God, innit? And I have that connection. But I don't feel that going to church daily I don't think it necessarily makes me a better person. I don't think it's required in this walk of life. Do you get what I'm trying to say? I believe in spirituality all day long, but attending somewhere, does that make you any better? Does that necessarily mean that you are closer to God? Not necessarily. That's just my opinion.
But I don't think we made that assumption, to be fair. It's just that you mentioned that you want to go to church out of your own free will. My question is, why is going to church not part of your free will? Like, why don't you?
I don't prioritize it.
Right, why?
Why? I don't think the attendance every week is that important.
So it sounds like you're not gaining something from that regular attendance then. Or it doesn't sound like it's giving you a particular value. Because you're saying
and I prioritize other things. So it's like I'd rather, just like Ovi mentioned, if, for example, on a Sunday there's something I can do that, I don't know, equates to a financial benefit.
Don't come and lie. Don't come and lie.
I'm just saying, no, I'm being serious. Like, if there's work to do, again, work doesn't necessarily mean going out there to work, and you know what I mean, but it could be preparing for. I'd rather do that on a Sunday where I've got the day to myself, or just have a lie-in. To me, there's value in just relaxing as well. That's just me, innit?
Interesting.
But you know what?
But I think
I partly hear what he's saying though, because a lot of guys think to themselves that what am I benefiting or what
Yeah.
am I gaining?
What's the value?
And that's the actual thing. So for me personally, one of the things that I actually like about the fact about going to church is I feel like I'm growing in certain areas and certain aspects, and I feel like church provides me personally with a lot of direction, and it gives me an anchor. Whereas some people might not feel like that. It doesn't mean I don't have my flaws. It doesn't mean that I can't, maybe deviate. But for me, it gives me a sense of purpose. But that's just my own personal conviction. And I don't think every guy has that conviction to want. Is
it a case, because I'm just thinking about it with my female head, obviously, but with women, but if we do something and we see value in it, we are quick to tell our friends, tell our sisters, tell everybody, oh my God, this thing is amazing, you need to do it too. But it doesn't sound like guys do the same thing. Because before you even spoke, I was going to say, so is it a case that the guys who are going to church, the 20, 30% or whatever, aren't vocal about the benefits they're reaping from church? So the guys who aren't going don't know that there's value in going.
I've been friends with Dami how many years now? no, just
but me and Kule met in church though.
We I was like 9, 10 or whatever. We met in church, and we've known each other since then.
I met Dami in church as well.
Yeah, but I've known Kule longer, and we're men. It's about the men today.
Oh my days.
So you're disagreeing that guys, so you're saying you've told Dami as much as you possibly can all the benefits about church,
but then when me and Kule met in church though, Kule, to be fair, when we met in church, we were younger then, innit? There was a reason to go, innit? Like we were young. What else were we really doing at the time? No, that was you, bro, not me. Please don't drag me into that.
It was either the girls or the youth club.
It was youth, exactly. The youth was what drew us there. It was just an activity. So at the time for us, there was nothing almost better to do. We go to church daily. Yeah, we weren't necessarily going for the word. We went there because there was something that brought us there.
It was a social aspect.
Yes.
So do you think you just haven't found a place where you can gain from, where you can learn from? Maybe you just haven't found that one place or one I don't know, shepherd.
No,
I think it's priority, isn't it? I think it's how we prioritize what is more important to us in life. I think for men, the way we tend to reason is, financial. Is it going to bring me a job? Is it going to put money in my pocket? Is it going to feed me? Do you understand? So if those things are not met, I think church for us, 90% or even 99% of the time is at the bottom. We don't really relate with it, except we are going through massive challenge where someone would now have to drag us to church, or we are now convinced that, I need to just be in church. And oftentimes when that is the rationale that brings us to church, once that thing is sorted, what you tend to see is that we are back out again. Do you understand? We are in for a little while. Once we've made that connection, once we've got that job, now we start using that job as an excuse not to come back into church. And that shouldn't be the reason. That shouldn't be justified at all. There is a lot we gain from church. And I think in one of the meetings we had, either last Wednesday or so, what we learned is, if you look at all the businesses and most companies in this world and society, a lot of them have a foundation in Christ or in the Bible, scripturally. We talked about Google being founded from the scriptures. We talked about what was the name, Uber Eats, Eats Out, or whatever, all those things were founded in the scripture. So to be fair, there is absolutely nothing we as men should look for outside that cannot be found on the inside, because at the end of the day, it's God who created all things, and all things originated from him. So it's a case of putting that priority right, to me, that will make you rather say be in church or not be in church.
This is why I asked the question I asked, because we're talking about one being in right standing with God, to know that there's nothing we can do outside of him, but then there's attending church. And from what the sounds of what Dami's saying, he wants to be in the right standing with God, but doesn't see the role that church plays in that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I see the way I look at church for me is like it's a place to go. I look at church, going to church as like a reset. So when it just helps you it assists you to walk down that to seek Christ in it. It just assists you, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. That's all it is, me personally.
So pay as you go blessing is what you're saying.
Pay as you go blessing. Nah, it's just that you don't need to go to church just to be blessed. Like I don't think.
Am I ignorant in saying that because Christianity or religions are, I don't want to say illogical and irrational, but because part of the male difference between female and between females and males is that male think more rationally and more logically. Do you think that plays a part in like believing in God in general?
I kind of agree with you because I think I've personally noticed from the guys I've spoken with outside of this panel that if men feel they can do it by themselves, the need for God isn't there anymore. Like what Minister Richard said, it's when there's a case of this is stronger than me. I need something beyond me. That then need.
But don't get me wrong. I don't think I can do things by myself though. So like, I pray every day. I wouldn't pray every day. And before I go to sleep, if I felt that I could do it by myself, there'd be no reason to pray. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I have to ask for things. I have to request for things. If I thought it was all me, then.
So reading the Bible is sometimes, going to church is sometimes, but you pray all the time, or like what?
I pray like I can pray about like even whilst I'm driving. I like to think I have conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, it's key. I do it daily.
You say, I don't know if I can ask this, but would you say that you're proud of your spiritual life at the moment? Like you're happy with it?
It's not the best, but it's better than what it used to be. Correct. In fact, it started getting better at the beginning of Corona. That whole when everyone went into lockdown. That's when.
But everybody was alone.
The end is now.
No, not even because of that. It's just because everything was closed, and I just had time to think about certain things. That's all.
You had nowhere to go. See.
No, but then I was able to reflect on certain things. That's what it was.
We have so.
What about your spiritual?
Well, I think there's.
Go on, I'm listening.
So who's speaking?
Hi, Cecilia.
Hi.
Cecilia.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment, right? I was having a conversation just now with someone, and I was saying that there are many men who say women worship their pastors. So I gave an example. I was just having a chat with my friend, and I gave an example, and I'm like, there are so many times I don't feel like praying, or I can't pray for myself, or I can't find the words to say to God. And the next thing I do is to pick up my phone and call my fiance, and I tell him, I can't pray for myself right now. I just need you to pray for me. And in that moment, he prays for me, and I just feel calm again. In a situation where my fiance does not read his Bible or does not go to church, the next person I can think of to call is either one of my very spiritual girlfriends or my pastor. And then we begin to wonder why women are so attached to their pastors or do everything their pastor says. So I have a question. If you say you don't go to church and you don't read your Bible, how then do you build your spirituality?
That's
a good question.
That's a good question.
Sorry?
If you don't go to church or read your Bible daily, or pray.
No, but I think that's less. No, but I think that's less for me and more for Danny.
So you're different. Obi, please tell us your spiritual routine. I mean,
different.
I want to know.
No, because my spiritual, I wouldn't say I've got a spiritual routine. I've accepted that I can't know if there is God, and I can't know if there is no God, and I'm fine with that uncertainty. So I do not have a form of spirituality.
So you're agnostic.
I'm just fine with being good and aspiring to be good.
Fair
So
enough.
would you say you're a Christian then?
No.
Oh, now we're getting somewhere.
Yes, this is going to take an interesting turn. Maybe we'll come back to you. Dami, what about you? Cecilia's question.
What was the question?
So if you don't go to church and Bible reading is a bit of a struggle sometimes, how do you build your spiritual life?
I don't know. I don't know. That sounds like a tricky question. I don't think I have the full answer to that. Again, everything's a personal relationship, innit? I don't know what is the right way, what is the wrong way. I don't know. For me, from someone that didn't really care about didn't really care not a few years ago, to be able to even speak to God daily, for me it's a big step. So I don't know, maybe in the next year I'll start coming to church 3 times a week. I don't know.
Tomorrow's not promised though.
Yeah, but just because I go to church tomorrow doesn't mean that I'm gonna make it into heaven. So
But the chances are more. That's the thing, though. It's a chance thing. To be fair, you're right. Not everyone that goes to church is 100% God, but the chances are, if
it helps. That's what I'm.
It helps. If you're constantly under something,
It helps.
chances are you will listen.
Yeah, but then again, if I go to church and I do a madness outside daily, what happens then?
But that's where the accountability Kunle was talking about comes in, because when you give yourself to church, then, for example, me and you, Dami, now we're friends. If I see you outside and doing the wrong thing, it's a case of me approaching you and saying, "Hey, Dami, oh, you know what? That thing wasn't that great. You know, or that's against what the Bible teaches. You know, you're more likely to listen." But when you haven't got that accountability, everything goes. No one can, no one holds you to questioning. Do you get? And
but it's not the church that's going to hold you to that, is it?
But
The church, the building
but the church, but you should understand that the church we're talking about, we're not just talking about the building. The building that we use is a university. The moment we are out of there, it is Sunderland University. When we go in there, it becomes church. Do you get? So when we say you've been held to account, it's the people who go into church that guides you. It's not even always about just the people seeing you, but there are times that you might go to a place. For example, you might want to go into, I'm not saying it is wrong to go into some certain places, but there are places that you want to go in. You might not be sure who will be there. It could be any member of the church that you attend that are in that vicinity. And because of that, you would hold yourself in a position where you wouldn't want to do the wrong things because anyone could be seeing you. Do you understand? And that's one of the things that church provides you. Indirectly, you might say that might be indirect, or it could be directly done. And for Cecilia's question on, how do you grow yourself if you don't go to church? That's why the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. And he also tells us that we should not forsake the gathering of the brethren, because there is something in there that helps us. Because when we are all gathered together, we learn more, we grow more, we are able to do things, I'm not the fountain of all knowledge. I go to church because Ore is teaching, for example, and I learned from Ore what I thought I had known. When Ore says it, I pick it up and I jot it down. And by doing that, we learn more of each other on a daily basis. And if you don't go to church, if you think you are the fountain of all knowledge based on what you think you know, you're limited by what we know, by what as an individual, what you know. Do you understand? So that coming together, and that's why we encourage you coming to church, not because if you come to church, it's a visa to heaven. No, it's so that you can all come together and learn more, and you grow more by coming together on a daily basis.
I agree with everything you're saying. Again, that's why I'm a part-timer. It's not like I don't go. So I agree.
We're gonna move you from part-time very soon, hopefully.
When you ask the question, how do you grow your spirituality? Yeah, that's assuming that the guys who don't go to church but yet still pray and do other stuff, that's assuming that they actually want to grow that spirituality. Some people are actually just fine with having a relationship. It's like being friends with someone. Okay, I'm friends with you today. I'm friends with you tomorrow. I may not constantly do something that increases our friendship. I might just be cool with the fact we're friends or we have a relationship. It's just that I guess the relationship with Christ might be a bit different.
I have a question. So you guys, DK and Dami, you're friends. Do you hold yourself accountable, like spiritually, or with any kind of, you know, Christian topics, or, you know, if you see Dami doing things, or Dami, if you see Kule doing things, do you hold yourself accountable?
Yeah, we actually do. Well, yeah, he actually does. You know, well, he probably holds me more accountable than I do him.
I think it might be maybe it's an age thing. I don't know, but I was cool. If I see you doing something, I'll be like, bro.
So yeah, no, it's true. So if I'm doing something or however I'm acting is not Christian like, Dami would point it out to me. He'd say it to me.
And I don't go to church every day.
How do you know what Christian like if you don't read your Bible? How do you know? How can you make him accountable?
Listen, if I'm reading the Bible inside out, I know what's good, quote unquote, and I know what's not so good. I'm an adult. You know what I mean?
So we do have conversations like that about church and growth and Christianity and all of that. But at the end of the day, I remember before, even just to get Dami to come to church, I used to call Dami like, remember Dami when I used to call you like 7:30, 8 in the morning?
Yeah, pastors do the same thing.
Yeah, right. So I used to do that, yeah, just as a way to kind of like, you know, encourage him. And I've done it with a couple other guys as well. And for some time it worked. And after a while I was like, yeah,
You
didn't prioritize it. But that's not down to me. It's a personal thing at the end of the day. So, you know, you can't say, oh, you know, he's your friend, he should be in church. No, everyone's, you know, it's within everyone's capacity and right to commit to it.
But it's just my character as well, I think. Again, even at first, like I know what the right thing to do is. I know I need to go to church. I'm not against it. But sometimes, based on whatever's going on elsewhere, I might be like, going to church every day is taking time out of my day. It doesn't mean that I'm not a Christian. I'll still wake up in the morning, first thing, pray, spend my time speaking to God, etc., and then continue my day.
You say go to church every day, but it's
okay.
like...
I'm exaggerating. All right, not every day, sorry, but being constant in church. So going for the various.
It's literally a gym session every Sunday. Like the amount, like, you know.
I don't even go gym anymore.
Well, it's about 90 minutes. How long is church? 90 minutes, an hour?
Yeah.
About
90 minutes, an hour.
The travel time.
You can log on online now. You don't even need to travel.
I do. Well, not often because of priority, but I did used to log in.
can I just quickly also chip in one of the Ovi, did you want to say something quickly?
Nasty.
Yeah, so I was saying one of the benefits of going to church, and I think a lot of people who've been burnt will attest to it, is and I said it earlier on that the reason why, or partly one of the reasons why society is what it is today, is because men are actually missing in church. It's a big issue, because at the end of the day, if men are not living up to what they're supposed to be doing, when we're not being father figures to the kids that we are raising, generations down the line are just decaying more and more and more and more, and society is getting even worse than what it is. And if care is not taken, if that's not sorted out on time, then it continues forever. When I got married, the church I was in at the time they were mostly all singles. And when I had issues early in marriage, there was no one I could actually speak to in that church at the time, to even give me the right counsel. And you can imagine if I wasn't in church, so the sort of counsel that I would be receiving will be from my fellow peers who don't go to church. And what that would give me is, imagine you having an issue with your missus, and then what they would say to you, she's the only one. What does she mean? You know what? Just go and pick up this or that girl, you know, or just blank her, don't even talk to her. This is sort of the advice that you would generally get. Not everyone does it, but a lot of the time when you hook up with friends and you're all in the beer parlor, you know, these are sort of the conversations that you would pick up. But when you are within the gospel, when you're within the church gathering, the advice are very, very different. And even though you are having, however bad your relationship is going, there is always hope being given to you in the church. You know, except if it's a case of what's it called now, where the man is beating up his wife and all of that. That's a separate issue. But if it's on, you know, little things that would normally get you angry. Okay, you got home late, your wife questions you, why have you come home late? And then you throw in the whole, you know, all the sink, and then you say, you know what, well, why will you be questioning me? But when you grow up or you are within the gathering of the church, they tend to educate you on these things. They tend to let you understand how you should behave as a man, as a woman, within your family, within the society. So it sort of nurtures you on the right path. But when you're not in the church, that means you've actually limited the sort of advice you would naturally get. There might not be scriptural advice that you would get. You'd probably be getting advice based on everyone's instincts, how I think I would do if my wife behaved the way your wife behaved. And so they would actually give you that sort of counter rather than giving you the biblical counter, which is what is the truth and what you should stand on. So for me, I think it's beneficial for us men to be in the church than being out of the church.
I think what I'm getting from this whole conversation is, as the need arises in a man's life, I think it becomes more apparent whether or not he really needs God. I think, and I'm not even trying to like generalize in you guys' life, but I think Obi and Dami, when you're still single, you kind of feel like, okay, I don't, because what Minister Richard is saying about, oh, you need to take your role in society, you know, the father, all those things aren't really real to you guys right now. So the real need for you to want to do all those things, I kind of get that, okay, it's not there. But I have a question based on that, because we've had a shout out directed at Ovi from, you know, the chats. So I want to ask a question. If you had a woman in your life, do you think that would change your decision? Like what Cecilia was saying, when she's desperate and she can't pray for herself, she calls her fiance. If you had a woman who needed you to be a regular church attender, to be spiritually strong, do you think that would influence whether or not you took your spiritual life a little bit more of a priority? And be honest, because I know some women believe that can change.
I would say this much, that I'll take that question in itself is part of the reason why I'm actually non-religious, because every religion has a desire to recruit people. It's it's like all religions just want to get more people, and there's about, God knows, 4,000 odd religions, at least they're recognized in the world, and everyone is trying to recruit new participants, people to join them. And my thing has always been, religion is kind of, when I look at it on a broad base, not picking on any religion, religion has deprioritized the importance of being good. Because if I'm a good man and I am not a Christian, you will tell me I will not make heaven. If I am a good man and I'm a Muslim, you will tell me I will not make heaven. Doesn't matter what religion I'm in, my being good is insufficient for any religion. So you create a parallel shift where people are fine being bad, but if I believe in God, well, I can ask forgiveness and I can just carry on. So I would question even the accountability side of things, because people hold themselves less accountable because they know there's a pot of forgiveness that is a never-ending well of resource. Even if I killed someone tomorrow, I could just go and ask for forgiveness.
So is there something wrong with asking for forgiveness then?
I don't say there's anything wrong with it. What I'm saying is that religion itself is to prioritize the importance of holding yourself to a higher standards in terms of your personal goodness. So would you be good if you weren't threatened with the possibility of hellfire?
I hear what you're saying.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but then how do you measure being good? Because you're saying, would you be good? Like the good that you're referring to, if I was to ask
I think
you.
Dami sort of touched on it. So Dami said, I don't need to go to church to know what is good. It's like a lion. A lion is born, and a lion knows, as much as a lion can eat meat, a lion will not go and eat its cub. Or when the lion grows, will not eat his own mother, because even without our level of education and awareness, it knows. So I don't think you necessarily need a religion to actually have a moral compass, at least to my level of understanding, at least.
Well, moral compass and religion are two different things, though.
Yeah, and
You
I
can be-
think
you
good
can be
is
morally
relative.
You can be good,
So-
like, but then that's
If you
it. Just
talk about good, you need to first of all says that you have to answer the question who defines what is good. If I define what is good for myself, then I do what's good for me. But if there is if God defines what's good, then I'm obviously doing what's good for God. We've got someone who wants to speak. Stacey, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Ore. Two things that I want to say, one at OV and one generally. I'll start with the general point. So as a woman who's grown up in the church, I think the church has a role to play in conditioning women in terms of the type of man that is acceptable to date or not, particularly when it comes to like how active he is in church. So you're told, you know, if he's not serving in church, if he's not working in church, he's not a responsible man, etc. And actually in time, I've come to not necessarily agree with that, but actually say what matters is one, that he's a Bible-believing Christian, that he can pray for himself, he can pray for me, and I can trust that. And that his character as a human being and the value that he holds align with mine, which is what comes to my point about OV. I think the question Ore was asking you about if a woman was interested in you or would it make you want to go to church? And I don't think you necessarily answered that question, because I think what matters is fundamentally you don't share the same belief or you don't share the same values as a woman who is a Christian. Therefore, I think that rules out, even if she wanted you, unless you're choosing to believe in God, in his existence, in his word, then you attending church actually is completely irrelevant in this context. Do I make sense?
Yeah, you can't ask over that question.
Sorry, Dami?
Sorry, can you just, because I didn't get the last part of it.
A lot of English. She wants to repeat yourself.
I have to digest.
Yeah.
I
So,
feel
Ore
Ovi, that
asked,
question can't apply to Ovi because he said from the jump that he's basically not a Christian. So the question, you can't ask him that question. It doesn't stick.
exactly. So that question would be much more relevant to someone like Dami, who does believe in God.
I
right?
kind of disagree because I've heard of experiences where because this guy is interested in the girl and the girl's a Christian, it piqued his interest and curiosity in Christianity to even find out what it's about in the first place. So yes, it may not apply because he doesn't believe in Christianity, but if a woman who fits your perfect image comes, Ovi, would you consider it?
surely that can't be
No,
sustained.
but I think to the point around it is what's your motive? So have I just decided to adopt a religion or seem to adopt a religion because I want to date this woman? And if that is the case, am I doing it? I would always have the question, am I doing it purely because I have a love for this religion and a love for God or the God of this religion? Or am I doing it because of my love for this woman?
Have any of you ever followed a woman to church?
Personally, I wouldn't do it. But obviously, I'm just saying if I did it, that would be the issue. Sorry?
Have you in the past? I'm asking.
Have I in the past what?
Followed a woman to church.
Tried a religion because of.
Yeah, like a woman was part of your motive for being in a church.
Oh no.
No.
Dami just yes.
Dami said from the get-go.
No, I said no. Because I was gonna say yes, but I thought the way you worded the question was different. So no, I've never followed a woman to church in order to sort of gain likability from her. No.
Have you gone to a church because of women?
No. That's not I'm not built like that. I don't do that.
Hello, Dami Adenuga.
Hi, actually, Sandra, I think you answered you asked the question I was going to ask, because it's quite unheard of to hear a man changing the religion for women. I know quite a few examples of women picking up their husbands' religions, but I don't think I've heard it
the other way around. So it'd be quite interesting if, to hear about men's opinion of that.
Been converted because of a woman there.
Yeah, but it has been done. It has been done. We have. I mean, I know personally of someone who became a Christian because his wife is a Christian, but then he wasn't of any religion, so he was just a freelancer. Whatever goes goes. But on seeing, what his wife has done, and then I think one of the things that convinced him was because they didn't have a child for a very, very long time, almost about 11 years. And the way it happened was just miraculous. And in all through that period, she kept being prayerful. Do you understand? And so that was what swayed him to become a Christian. But in terms of moving from one religion to Christianity, then I haven't heard personally, but I do think it would exist.
Okay, maybe not in that case, but has a woman given you the incentive to strengthen your relationship with God?
My wife, I met, she was a Christian before I even started doing. I mean, I was born into a Christian home, but didn't make me a Christian. Do you get? But when I met her, she was a Christian, and I was still sharing with someone yesterday on the phone. I actually broke up with her because of that, and because ordinary peck, it was like speaking in tongues to even get. And I just thought, what's all of this? It's just too stressful. Do you get? But she led me to Christ eventually over time. But yeah, it was her who got me to have that fellowship with Christ actually.
It sounds like we don't really play too much, sometimes anyway, or we don't really play too much of a role in getting guys to change their religion. And when it does happen, it's a long process. But anyway, we've got lots of comments and lots of questions. So let me just quickly go through some. So Ovi, in response to what you said about Christianity or religion not necessarily being the marker for what's good or not good, got some comments here. Someone says the essence of Christianity is not just for forgiveness, but more importantly, getting the help needed to do good and to please God. Another person said a person can be doing good, but their heart is not pure. Their motives may not always be in the right place. Then in regards to relationships, and I think this is probably in relation to my question, the way men view relationships is very different to women. Men's relationships are often not so deep to warrant maintaining or frequent communication, unlike women's relationships. Despite the lack of this regular maintenance, the relationship is still solid enough to deal with circumstances within the friendship. This same approach is often seen in men's relationship with God. So you guys treat your relationship with God the same way your relationship with each other is. That's interesting. Disagreements, agreements. I really want to get.
I don't agree with that.
I actually. Go ahead, Kulay.
You can't compare your relationship. Well, I can't compare my relationship with God to my relationship with women or a woman or my wife.
With guys. So the commenter is saying men's relationship with one another is not as deep and doesn't require as much communication and maintaining as women's relationship with one another. So men's mindset when it comes to relationship in general is different. So the way they see God and relate to God is different on that basis.
The way that I've seen brotherhood amongst men is a lot more deeper and intimate than I've seen it with girls.
Trust me.
Or women. You tend to see a lot more bitchiness with women. And shadiness with women. No, in comparison
women
to
fight, yeah.
In comparison to how you see it with men. That's just from my observation. I'm not saying that there aren't relationships that do foster like that. But I haven't seen it that way.
No, men and women relationships are the same. It's just men compartmentalize their feelings. So if they can actually see their friend and they have an issue and be like, okay, that's my friend. But that issue that we have is a separate issue. Women, we hold the issue on our chest, on our forehead, in our eyes, on our hands. Like if we have an issue with someone, that becomes the whole issue with that person. But with men, you compartmentalize stuff to the fact where you just you pack all these different feelings away and not even deal with it. But that person is still your friend for life. You've been through thick and thin with that person. That's the only difference. But relationships are the same.
Isn't that the essence of relationships, though?
Pardon?
Isn't that the essence of relationships?
What's the essence?
To bottle things up and not deal with them.
No, you can.
I'm saying one sex has the right approach. If there's a balance between the two where you're able to separate the issue from the person and you're not holding it on your chest, on your heart, and everything, fair enough.
Yeah, then that's a problem. That's not good.
I think that's the difference between men and women.
Okay, someone's asked you.
Well, I was going to say.
Sorry, go ahead for asking the question.
No, I was just going to say, because I'll say to a degree, there is probably some truth in the relationship dynamic. Because I would say all relationships are transactional. So we can debate that part, but that's how everything works. And from a man's perspective, the more you achieve and do things for yourself, the less you think you need a higher power to actually do things. And I'll say that's probably one of the main contributing factor to men not being in church, if I go back to like the core of the sort of conversation. Because if I believe I can achieve what I can without the help of a higher power, then why would I prioritize that higher power as opposed to just prioritizing doing what I need to do to get what I need done?
So someone said here, they're curious on how one becomes agnostic, given that most of us grew up with some form of religion. They want to know, Ovi, have you always been agnostic?
I think it's for, okay. Yep.
Did you hear the question, Ovi?
Yeah, I just said, yeah, I grew up in a Christian household, so I've not always been agnostic.
So what changed? Just, to help the person understand. If you wish to share.
Was it too personal?
No, it's not personal. I'll say I've got a question in mind, and I'll probably say that is probably the main driver behind everything. So I'll probably say my earliest experience, I was probably about 6 or 7 when I'd gone to Sunday school, and I just had the question, don't know why, just thinking about things, having read the Bible. And because I had like a smaller Bible, it was a kid's Bible, which I used to read. I'd gone to Sunday school and I just asked the teacher, I was like, okay, so everyone's got a father, so who created God? Or who's God's mother and father? And she just went, only the devil's kids ask such questions. So that was like my first or earliest experience. Okay, that was back in Nigeria though, so there's no filter out there. So that was like my earliest experience, and as young as 5, 6, 7 years old, I was already asking those sorts of questions. And the more I said it,
the devil is at work.
I guess what he was trying to say, that the more he said it, the more they thought he was the devil's child.
Exactly. So yeah, as I said, to sort of explore other religions and start to figure things out for myself, what I quickly realized is that in truth, there is a lot. It's just part of the human condition. There are things that we can't explain, and we know that without that explanation, our lives lack meaning, because we occupy a situation where we're always in an existential crisis of answering that question, why are we here? And we don't know why we're here. So we've created reasons as to why we're here, and different religions will create their own reasons as to why they're here, but none of us can verify any of it. None of us truly know what the right religion is, who God is, if there is a God. We don't know the answers. So we replace our uncertainty with religions. And the more I started to understand that, I got to a place where I went, okay, I've realized after exploring the different sort of religions, at least the ones that I wanted to explore, that they don't necessarily have the answers that I seek. And equally, I will not say that there isn't more to this world than meets the eye. And since I don't know either way, I might as well stop wasting so much effort trying to prove or disprove things and actually just focus on my own sort of personal journey of being the best person I can be in this world in which I find myself.
Can I quickly just say something on
Yeah.
that? So I think what you went through as a 6-year-old, asking those very, very valid questions that you had, I think it was wrong of any teacher to have responded to you with the way they responded. And that's very, very wrong. Christianity, on the other hand, is not a religion. It's not a religion. God has never intended for Christianity to be a religion. It is the truth and it's the way of life. Did you understand? And God didn't just intend. Now, why he didn't want it to be a religion was because if you look at true scriptures, the Sadducees and the Pharisees as scribes, as teachers, they practice religion. And religion is, we pray regularly, we give alms, we are good. It's all the moral, that's morality. And morality doesn't take you anywhere to God. Do you understand? Those who practice morality, I forgot what was his name again in the scriptures, that God had to send one of the disciples to go teach him the way of life, even though that person practiced morality, but because morality won't take you anywhere, he had to ensure that you receive salvation. And when you look at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, it started off as God, 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 God. Everywhere in Genesis chapter 1, you would see God. By the time Genesis chapter 2 kicked in, when man was introduced, he changed it from God, because God was like a rulership. He was like he's still overall, but he now started, when man came in, he started to refer to him or to himself as the Lord your God. The Lord there was the relational side of God, to show him that this is a relationship that we would have. It is no longer just about what I say, but because I want to have that relationship with you, and that's why I have instituted this. Do you understand? So relationship is what Christianity is all about. I know to the questions that you have,
So
I personally would, yeah. You said something, Ovi.
So I just wanted to ask something. So I get your point around the relationship and around it being the truth. How I sort of summarize it is this: in the context of most religions, most gods have three things in common. They are all powerful, they're all knowing, and they're all good. Now, those three.
All knowing. They're not all knowing.
Well, if they're God, then they're all knowing by definition. So if all gods, so let me just ask the question, because is this: if all gods across all faiths and all religions have these three qualities, then they can't necessarily be true, except our definition of good is potentially incorrect, because these gods kill and are fine with people being killed. These gods are responsible for the nature in which we find ourselves. These gods knew that these things would happen and did not prevent them. So on every pillar in which God is built, he can't be all of those things. He can be all powerful, but he can't be all knowing and also good.
To you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say,
To me.
but
To me.
yeah, I mean,
but he's looking at you through that lens.
The only thing I would say is different about the God of the Christians versus the other gods, just to sort of summarize this, because I don't really want it to go into a discussion of is God real or not. But God of the Christians is the only one that wants to have a relationship with his people. The other gods are happy being all powerful, all knowing up there, and not really come down to the level of the humans, except it is in a case of you have to worship and sacrifice to me. Again, I've not done my research on all religions, but this is the reason why, to me, Christianity stands out to the rest of them. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions, and I think most of them came in through comments, but we've got a few that we should probably answer, and it'd be good to get everyone's opinion. and they're mostly around why women are more likely to go to church than men. One of the questions says, are women more gullible than men? And is this the reason why more of them go to church? So we're gullible for going to church. Wow.
I don't think it's a men versus church kind of conversation. I think what we've identified is men versus faith. And I think that's the true kind of conflict of men not being physically in church, because it's a faith issue.
Yeah, so I wouldn't really say it's gullibility on a woman's side. I mean, I can understand why the question asker, if that's English, would say that, because in some cases there are situations where it's abused and taken for granted. But again, like Sandra said, I think it might be a thing of faith more than anything. The next question, are women more likely to go to church as they are forced by society to look for husbands there? Is it that society does not put the same pressures on men? Men, what say ye?
Women more likely to go to church because they're forced to look for husbands there.
In church, and is it that society does not put the same pressure on men?
Hold on, isn't it men that's
But I would say that goes both ways.
I think women are told to find a godly. I think Stacey said it when she called. Women are told, oh, you have to find this kind of man, you have to be a Christian, blah blah blah. But are men told the same thing, or just find a wife?
You know what? Stacey Smith sounds like someone that I know very well.
The same thing.
Did you feel you recognized the voice?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, let's go back to the question. So for me,
Yeah, go ahead.
for me, I think Ovi was right. I think the pressure is on both sides, or maybe slightly more on the women, but I think both sides have the pressure. I think where the women feel more pressured is because the clock ticks faster in terms of having the timing for them to give to bear children, because at a certain age then it becomes more difficult. But I do think that even the guys are pressured into getting married, but it's not just as much as the women.
But would you say they're also pressured to go to church to find a wife, as much as the women are told to go to church to find a husband?
Some people do. I think that can happen.
No, but I think there's a second layer to this though, because of the people that don't go to church, I would hazard a guess that most of them, their fathers didn't go to church. So in general, we're kind of just repeating the cycle. If you go to church, I'm going to make a very broad assumption here. I'm going to assume Aura, you're a churchgoer. Is your mom a churchgoer?
She wasn't actually until I was about 13.
Okay, but she is now, or she has been since you were 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in truth, there is a certain level of it, obviously me being an anomaly, there's a certain level of it that is trained where this is sort of what's happened before me, and this is the path that I'm going to take. So in most cases, most men these days don't go to, and when I say men, I'm not referring to our generation, I'm referring to like my dad's generation. Majority of them didn't go to church. So now it's almost like, well, in most cases, my dad didn't go to church. It's like in my household, for example, my mom would go to church and take the kids to church, but my dad wouldn't go to church. So that is the example that's kind of been laid before you. And that's most likely what you're going to follow, except you come into your own sort of insight in terms of, okay, I found a light and I want to go to church.
I think
That wasn't the case for me.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's slightly naive, because we tend to duplicate good habits of our parents.
No, we do the bad ones.
We duplicate all the habits.
How is what? Say my mom, God forbid, is a crackhead. I'm not repeating those habits. Like, it's not.
And I think that's why he said it's a broad generalization. Some people do, and it could be part of the reason why, because some didn't see that example laid before them. There's no reason to go. Others, like, well, I think all of us here probably will be anomalies to that, but there are some people who that is the situation for them. Dami, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, the other Dami, sorry.
Oh, sorry, yes, I can. And just separate to the point that I was going to make is actually, Sandra, people actually tend to repeat the exact bad of what their parents do. That's why most of the time when you see someone has, I don't know, like is a murderer, if you look into the past, or I don't know, maybe like a rapist, it will be because they've gone through maybe with their parents something akin to that. I don't think we normally tend to repeat just the good. But also, so just a separate point to that is, I was talking with my husband, who's not going to talk, so I'll talk for him. He says, is it potentially because most churches are run by men, and that is it that women, because we are so we're meant to be submissive, that we find it okay to listen to another man sort of Sunday after Sunday, whereas for a man we'll be like, okay, but who are you and how do you apply to my home?
Word.
I heard that.
Okay, so this is the autonomy thing we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that has it. So if it was a female pastor, you're more likely to go, okay, we know what to do.
So ladies, let's get up our churches.
It has something to do with gender though, because if I listen to a man preaching, the first thing I'm thinking of is not the fact that he's a man. I'm thinking, do you know what you're talking about? Like, are you genuine? Are you, because especially if I have a discerning spirit, that's what I'm looking for. So whether it's a man or it's a woman, I'm looking at the content of what they're actually speaking about from the pulpit.
But are you doing that now because you're a regular church goer?
But even before I was a regular, even when I was younger, when I hear a woman who's speaking from the pulpit and she's preaching down the word of God and she's making sense, I just see someone who's speaking the word of God, whether they're a woman or a man, for me is irrelevant because God can use anyone to do anything. So but I know there are some guys who would struggle to accept, okay, why does this man feel like he has the right to speak over me or whatever, and that's just down to them.
I mean, you agree.
I can see that happening. No, I can easily. I don't like, just like Connie said. I personally, for me to listen to you, full stop. You need to make sense. If you don't make sense, I can't take you seriously. So that doesn't necessarily apply to me, but I think that could be a possibility. The example Ovi gave, because like myself, I struggle with authority sometimes. I don't like being told what to do. Even sometimes I might even want to do it. If you're telling me to do it constantly over and over again, I'll go and choose the opposite direction.
That's the rebellion inside of you.
I'm a bit rebellious, that's a fact. So I could see it being a possibility. And also to answer Ovi's, I think another point Ovi made before about copying parents' traits. My dad was, I'm a part-timer in church, but my dad used to go heavily. My dad used to go MFM. So if you know about MFM, that one is a hot church.
By fire.
It's a hot church. So my dad went to church more than my mom. My dad was a warrior when it came to that. But I don't know. I question a lot of things. Now that I'm an adult, I question a lot of things that I experienced or he put us through as kids and stuff. And yeah, I don't think he was the best parent. I think, I think it was a terrible parent, to be honest with you. But that's no say for another day. And I think that partly might be the reason why I don't go.
Exactly, because that's what I was going to say.
Because my dad used to be like in church, like everybody used to recognize him. Everyone's like, my dad was like respected for prayer in church.
Yeah.
Like he used to pray for other people, but behind closed doors, your whole household is scattered. You get what I'm saying?
So, because so you kind of made the point though, because at the end of the day, it's either you're copying because that's what you've seen before you, or you've seen an extreme and you're just like, nah, this is not for me. I can see that you're claiming to be a Christian, but some of the other things that where you're moving behind the scene, I know you're not a Christian, and if this is what Christians do, then hey, maybe I'm just better where I'm at.
And then also.
Yeah, so that's what I was about to say. I think it's sort of edging into a conversation we had, was it last week or 2 weeks ago now, that we had that discussion where experiences, and I don't think this is a man thing, experiences shape the way we all relate to any religion, not just Christianity, which we said obviously not religion, but the way we were first taught it, the way the people who are supposed to be the custodians of this have related to us, plays a massive role in whether or not we then decide this is something I want to explore continuously or not. But what we concluded that day is human beings, as much as we say, yes, humans are the church, human beings are not Jesus. So the offense that human beings have caused isn't the offense of Jesus. They are two separate things, and God will help us to get past the hurt that human beings have caused to find Jesus. Mary, how are you?
Hey everyone, just a quick one. So just regarding like what Ovi's point about one parent going to church and the other not going. So my mum was a very church goer. My dad did not go to church at all. But I put that down to my mum being a sociable person. So I think my dad not being more of an introvert and not really liking to talk and chat and, you know, I don't know, fellowship and get to know people has kind of like, he did not want to kind of be amongst the church people. So I think that could be one of the reasons to why certain guys don't go to church, because it's just they find it long trying to like talk and getting to know people. So that's just a point. Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Mary.
Mary,
Yep.
did your father attend any other sort of gatherings that like apart from the church?
No, he didn't really like parties and stuff. Like he was,
Okay.
that was not his thing at all. Like we would have to drag him to come. Yeah. So I thought, because he's an introvert, like my dad's really quiet. Although in the house he's not, to be honest, but when it comes to social settings, he just keeps to himself. So I think some guys are like that in a way. So when they come to certain churches, they don't even talk. You can tell like they're just not there. It's not their thing. So yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mary. Marilyn, thank you for joining us. We can't hear you. Okay, while Marilyn is figuring that out.
Hi, I pray that my internet does not fail me. Hi.
Hello. No, it sounds like it's going.
Get in here already.
Put your food down.
Okay, Marilyn, if you can connect back, let us know. Right, so Sandra, if you could summarize our findings in today's experiment, what would you say they were?
Like I said before, there's some underlying, I feel like we haven't touched on the fact that I think there's a defining event or a defining kind of moment where, because you've both been to church, I'm thinking that there's a point in your history where you're just like, you know what, I don't want to do this, and this is not something that I'm really, you know, down for. But we couldn't get into that today. So it ended up being, you know, it's a faith thing. It's a men versus faith, and what you see around you and the patterns that you see around you, and you not finding any benefit, any financial or any, you know, personal benefit being in the church or attending church regularly. One of you, because without putting you both on a hot seat, one of you is, you know, on your spiritual journey by yourself, and one is just, you know, content with being at the moment, and, you know, finding out about other things. Then we have the other spectrum where, you know, God is, you know, attending church is beneficial, and God is beneficial to you, and your faith has been beneficial to you. And it's interesting, because the ones that are saying God is beneficial to you, you're in situations where your whole household, as in your like nuclear household, is in the church. So I don't know if that will change, you know, once you Ovi and Dami get into you know, start their own nuclear family, and then they decide that they want to go to church. I don't know if your faith kind of thought pattern will change at that point. But yeah, I just think that we need to go back to the drawing board in terms of bringing men to church and evangelizing about the faith instead of the attendance.
That's a good point. Marilyn, are you sorted?
Hi, I had to change device. My primary point was that we see Christianity expressed in a certain way where humans fail, because when you first come to Christ, Christ offers you the option to do life his way. Now, today I was preaching about Mary and Martha, And the thing about it is she opened her house to Christ and then proceeded to do things how she thought fit, but she was trying to do what he called her to do. So oftentimes people do things and fail because they're not doing it according to how the Creator is ordering us to do it. So you see them and they're in church and they shout church, but they're not necessarily living it according to God's power and purpose. And that's why we see failure time and time again. And unfortunately, it's based on that other people are put off and they're like, I see no change in this person. But that's often because that person, like every other human, has their failings and is still learning what it means to operate as Christ has called us to be. My second point was that I have parents who are now pastors, and my mum came to Christ first. My dad wasn't really interested because he'd seen so much crap in his life. And at one point he had nothing else and he was backed up against the wall. He made an ultimatum and said, if you do this for me, I'll follow you. And God turned it around. So unfortunately, I'm not saying that you have to get to a place of hopelessness, but sometimes that's the only thing that allows us to open the door to God. But yeah, thank you.
Earlier about not just breadcrumbs. Sometimes God can blind you and be like, yo, face me.
Yeah. But you know what? Already, go on, Ovi.
No, because I think that sort of goes back to the initial point in terms of, in the end, relationships are transactional. So, sorry to put you on the spot, but your dad got to a situation where he thought his own effort might not see him through, and so he needed extra spirituality or support from somewhere else to get over that hurdle. Now, for most men, until they get to that place, especially if things are on cruise control and things are actually working, it's unlikely you're going to go seek spiritual support.
Why do you want to do things the hard way? If there's an easier way to do something, it's like driving a manual in life.
No, but for the guy whose life is on cruise control and he's not met a hurdle, he's not made to solve himself, his life is easy. He's on automatic. He's on cruise control.
Okay.
So in fact, that's the issue. This cruise control is probably why he's not thinking he needs anything else.
Michael, what's your opinion?
Oh boy.
I know. I need to hear this.
I just have one question. I think if I understand correctly, today's session is about the fact that men are not present in church. But how do we reconcile that fact with the reality that most church leaders and pastors are men? Shouldn't that fact suggest that men dominate churches and women dominate followership in those churches? And how isn't the argument shouldn't the argument be then that why don't we have enough women dominating leadership in churches?
Maybe that'll be our next.
God will bless you 100 years.
The followership in those churches.
That was my point, but I was told I wasn't allowed to speak on it.
No, but that feels like a broader. Yeah. That's like a broader religious, not even just religious. That's a broader societal issue.
Yeah.
So I think if we start on that one,
we won't end.
we might be here for days.
Men being in position of leadership, they don't make up the majority of the church population. Leadership is the minority of the church population. So men, and this is what Sandra was saying when we were discussing this, that the men who are present in church, you will find them in that minority because that's where they tend to gravitate towards. You won't find them in the followership.
But that in itself poses an issue though, because how is it possible that in a church where the women are the majority, the few men who come along are the ones who are then making up the upper echelons of the church?
Oh my Nasco, come to next week.
so that's like you calling an election in which there are 90 women in this place and there's 100 people. There's 100 people in this place and 90 of them are women.
But that's assuming it's an election thing. Usually not.
Now doesn't matter what criteria you're using. It is highly unlikely that somehow, let's just assume we're using IQ. It's highly unlikely that the 10 men who happen to be in that room will be of higher IQ than the other 90. That's just not possible.
We'll discuss this next week. Guys, this has been real. This has been really good. I hope we've all gained something from this discussion. I know I certainly have. It's been interesting to hear all of our different perspectives. Any closing statements?
Yeah, what are the takeaways? What can we do to change this narrative?
Like one line. This is where we need the one-liners now, yeah.
I don't know if we can change the narrative in that sense. I think men have to want to go to church. They have to find something that gravitates towards them or pulls them in. And the thing is, I don't even think we'll ever find an answer to that question. Where are the men, or why are they not coming to church? There's so many different reasons. It's the same way you can ask the question, why is a church not growing? You can give all the answers you want. You can try all the things to get the people to come to the church. Whether or not they go is a different story. Because one of your topics could be, why is Christianity declining?
Is it though? That's the other thing.
Because crystals are rising.
It's true.
It's true. Or, and if we, obviously those conversations like that require obviously research and things like that, but there's so many other aspects that men being the least population in the church is just one point. It's just one stone.
Yeah, we can only cover one topic a session though. We can only cover one topic.
Okay, Mr. Richard Ovi, Dami, what are your final statements? What can we do? Is there anything we can do?
Evangelize your friends, please.
Huh? So I'm just going to come at this. I don't know what can be done, but this is as much as I probably will say, is that if we can agree on the basis that every relationship is transactional, the question then becomes, is the church providing enough value that a man sees a reason to go to a church?
So should we be praying that God should scatter and dismantle all the men so that they can run to Christ? Or
but that's like the minority of men who are getting to third mainland bridge before they can cross. That's different. What I'm saying is exclude the extremes. Just like your average guy who is a Christian, do you feel the church? He clearly doesn't feel the church is providing enough value for him to be there every Sunday.
Well,
so the question is, what would
you said in Nigeria there's more men in church than women, and that's because there's networking opportunities. So do we need to increase the networking opportunities business-wise in church?
So that's the value. That's the value that the church in Nigeria is providing him.
Should we ask a different question? Are the men's value system skewed a little bit?
Of course.
Skewed or different?
Not skewed, exactly different, because we started that in the beginning, because the man was given a role, and the role was to go and become a provider. So most of his values are centered around that. So if you want to appeal to the man, if you want a man to be there, then yes, you have to appeal to that need to be a provider, that need to be the authority, or that need to be on top. It's like the guy who's trying to sell you a BMW. He knows that, see, this is purely for your man ego. The only reason you're going to buy this car is not because you need it. His value is that it's going to soothe your ego. And if a bank is there going, oh, if you want to be a provider, it's not because you need this loan, but because you want to be a provider, you're going to go and take this loan. So you have to understand men and understand how best you're going to position something of value in the church that makes them want to be there on a regular basis.
Okay. All right. Dami, final statements.
Everything Ovi said.
Of course. Of course. But I'll read
but no, there needs to be. I think, yeah. Just for me personally, again, I don't want to say I don't like the idea that it has to be transactional. I don't like the idea of it. But if I'm being honest, when it comes to me, most things are kind of transactional. I have to be honest.
You're the one with the pay-as-you-go blessing. Like you have to pray when you like.
I mean, if you was gonna say, damn, every time you come to church, you get £100, I'd be there.
Wow, salvation for money. Okay.
You're asking me, no, church doesn't automatically equate to salvation. That's a joke, by the way. But you're saying, okay, what would be the incentive generally? If that was the case, then I'd be there.
Okay. Well,
that means women want nothing in return then.
Apparently not. We don't find. I don't know what value we're getting, but maybe we can discuss that on a different day.
Emotional value.
I can get that from my friends without going to church.
No, that's different. Your friends is not unconditional.
Are you sure? Yeah.
I can get
sure?
my family. My family will have to love me unconditionally.
Even your family is not unconditional. Let's be honest. We all know this.
You can't sleep here, please.
Honestly, I was so wrong that guys don't talk. You guys talk, like, wow. But honestly, thank you guys so much for coming and for opening up and for telling us everything that's in your mind. We really appreciate it. To all our listeners, everyone that phoned in, thank you guys so much. You really added to the conversation. And we will see you all next week. Please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to join us next week. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Come to church.
Right.
Come to church. Mind Jesus.
Is church back on?
Yeah, it is.
Church on now. Oh, it's back. Okay. All right.
Are you coming next week?
By the grace of God.
Amen. I'll send you a personal invite. Damn you.
Send me an Uber to my house.
That's monetary incentive right there.
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Cool.
Bye, everyone.
All right. All right.